As career counselors, we often get asked a question about scope and how scope is going to impact the careers of the future. Now, when you look at scope, it's merely the number of opportunities one would look at. However, one can't look at the future without thinking about how technology is going to impact it. Now, when you look at technology and the use of machines, we have seen historically that machines do a better job than human beings in three major areas, which is speed, accuracy, and repetition. So, for example, if you look at a manufacturing plant in an automobile sector, you would see how robots are working on the assembly line. They help make the process of production much simpler, faster, and cheaper over time. Now, while we have often thought that the influx of technology would take away jobs from human beings, what we have seen is that it's opened up new avenues of work as well. While technology has proven time and again that they're better at speed, at accuracy, and at repetitive tasks, human beings are better than machines at certain areas too. For example, if you looking at or analyzing unstructured sets of data, whether it is empathizing with other human beings, whether it is the communication of complex ideas, these are areas that human beings have been consistently better at machines as of now. Now, when you look at that, you might slowly understand why machines are not great at being effective problem solvers like human beings are. So the best way to look forward is to work hand in hand with machines and technology to make some of our lives easier, to make some of the work that we do a little more efficient, and thereby use our best intelligence in the places that we are good at. So that is what I believe is what we need to tell our students, that focus on areas that make you a human being. Focus on areas that help you understand others, communicate ideas with others, look at very, very complex problems, and see how you could structure them out and solve them. Today, we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which is called artificial intelligence. Now, before we understand what artificial intelligence is and what are the changes it is bringing about, let us first look at the word called revolution. A revolution is a large amount of change happening in a small span of time. Now, if you look historically, every single revolution we had an impact on human lifestyles and thereby had an impact on the kind of jobs we did. So let's look at the first revolution going back. The first revolution that we had as a human race was the agricultural revolution, where we went from being hunters and gatherers to people who could grow their own food, to controlling our own food, and thereby that has allowed us to live in communities, live in societies, and help us thrive. So we went from being hunters and gatherers to be masters of our own food. Now, when we look ahead, we would understand that the first revolution that we had as a human race was probably agriculture, but the first industrial revolution that we had was the steam engine, where we could not only move large amounts of goods, but we could move it faster than before. Now, that allowed us to communicate with other societies, that allows us to exchange goods with each other and trade very effectively. When you move on, we've seen the second industrial revolution was around mass production. Now, thanks to Henry Ford and the way he started to build cars, we've realized that we could produce goods much faster, much cheaper, and a much, much shorter span of time. Moving from there to the third industrial revolution, which was computers, I don't need to say how much computers have impacted our lives, our jobs, and everything we look at. Now, when we move from there to artificial intelligence, we've seen a large jump between the kind of careers one could do. We've seen a large jump in efficiency, and that would also help us understand why in the last 10 years, the biggest commodity has always been convenience. And when you look at convenience, technology has a very, very important role to play. Whether it is being able to order food at your doorstep, being able to market your ideas and yourself a little more effectively, and also using tech-based platforms to be able to talk about different challenges with other human beings across the planet. To explain this a little further, let's understand what technology really is. It's not something that's been added into our vocabulary just a few years ago or came in with the advent of computers. Every single jump that we made as a human race was with the help of technology itself. Agriculture was a form of technology. It was a method of actually growing food in a far more efficient way than just depending on a piece of land's naturally available food and resources. So agriculture was a form of technology. If you look at the first industrial revolution as well, when you're looking at the steam engine, now what enabled the steam engine? Before that, you needed the wheel. The wheel itself is another technology. If you're looking at storage of food, the storage itself was a form of technology again. Now, when you look at every single element out there, you'd see that technology has been impacted in some way or the other. It's just that it's been over time that the form in which technology has come in has shown us different methods to make things more efficient, has been able to build around things that we consider as convenient. Because if you look at the last 5 years, every piece of technology or every piece of improvement in our lives has come from one singular element, which is convenience. So whether it is about how you order your food from your doorstep, whether it is how you can order a taxi or a cab from your cell phone, or if it is whether you can book a ticket without standing in queues, whether that is for a movie or a railway station, every single thing that you do today is a matter of convenience. Now that has happened because technology is not only a domain of its own, but it's also impacted every single job that you can think around you. So let's look at technology in the way it's affected us as educators and teachers. Till 2019, if I had to ask any teacher that have you ever used an online platform to teach, to deliver your classes and to educate your students, most of us would have said no. But because of the pandemic, all of us were forced into doing online classes with the help of these technological platforms. Now, thanks to this, it has allowed us to continue with the education regardless of whether students were coming to class or not. So you see how technology, while was taking away certain jobs, it's opened up new avenues in efficiency, it's opened up new avenues in convenience, and it's opened up new systems that could help us do our work a little easier. Now that we've seen how technology can impact our lifestyles and thereby the kind of work that we do, let's look at how we can use the little bits of information that we have today, the little bit of changes and the jumps that we see around us to be able to predict the future. Now, while predicting the future, we might not be able to do that with a very high level of accuracy, but we can look at the little changes that are happening around us right now. Now, when you look at the little changes that are happening right now, let's look at the major areas where AI, tech is impacting jobs and careers already. Now, let's start with on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. If you see how transportation services have changed over the last few years, let's look at self-driven cars or autonomous vehicles. We've seen organizations or car manufacturers make cars that can decide on their own how to drive, how fast to drive, and over time, we've also seen that they could be replacements for human drivers altogether. We already have enough data to tell us that self-driven cars are not bound by the same challenges that human beings have. For example, a truck driver driving for about 20 hours non-stop is subject to fatigue. A self-driven vehicle does not have the same kind of challenges. We've seen how self-driven cars could, however, bring up new challenges on its own. One, how do we tell the car what is right, what is wrong? Let's look at a simple example. If a car had to choose between saving its own passengers or saving pedestrians, and it had no other choice, how would it make that choice? Would it be something that is going to be programmed into it? Who is going to decide whether one life is more valuable than the other? You see how when we talk about technology, we can't do it ethically without a conversation on understanding human behavior, understanding social sciences. So while we continuously talk about technology, we have to understand that it is not a conversation that could be complete without all streams and all subjects and all careers. So if you look at autonomous vehicles, if cars get safer because there are machines that are deciding on its own how to drive in a safer manner, you would also see that it is impacting other industries altogether. So today, let's say for example, if you had to buy a vehicle insurance because you are subject to making certain errors on the road, today or tomorrow, if a car drives itself and it guarantees your safety, do you think that insurance companies would change the way they actually create or even charge you for vehicle insurance? You would see how the banking sector gets impacted by a simple change in how cars are made. So what I mean to say by that is that a simple change in technology could impact not only itself, but industries that are connected to it. Now, let's look at commerce. if you see how cryptocurrencies and blockchain are hyped words today, you know that technology at its core is what drives it. Today, blockchain is not only used for banking sectors or financial sectors, it's also the driving force behind when you subscribe to a music service. So that no matter what device you log in from, you always have access to your favorite music. So we've also used these type of technologies regularly. So it's not something that we have seen that is going to happen later. It's something that we've already used in some sense or the other. Think about every time you've done an online transaction. Think about every time you got an OTP to validate that transaction, right? So you have security measures in place so that you are able to make safer transactions online. 30 years ago, if someone would have asked me, please share your banking details so that we can continue with this transaction, I don't think I would have been very, very comfortable. Today, I know for a fact that I have a secured system where I can make any transaction where the person that I'm making the transaction with and myself, we are both accountable to ensure that transaction is done in the correct manner. And the banking provider is accountable to ensure that transaction is safely done. We've also seen smart money management systems. So whether you use wallets, whether you use online systems to transfer money to accounts, you would notice that today you carry less cash in your wallets than before, primarily because of these smart money management systems. Now moving on to health sciences, we've seen how technology has impacted lifestyles and life expectancies as well. In health sciences, we have seen that change being most effective. We have seen human beings increase their life expectancy just because of the kind of medication, the kind of technology available to save lives, to improve lives as well. So let's look at simple examples like the way we create medicines. We are now doing research in medicines which help us communicate with the user, where you have organizations that are making pills that would go into your body, communicate with your cell phone, and tell you what is the internal condition of your body then. It could also tell you when would be the most appropriate time to take the next medicine. It would also discharge dosage basis the requirement of your body at that point in time. That in turn would reduce dependency on medicines, reduce chances of side effects, and also ensure that the system of these medicines become far more effective. We have seen how healthcare has also improved in other areas. We have seen robotic surgeries on certain videos that we might have seen on social media. Now, I'm not saying that robots are going to completely replace doctors or surgeons for that matter, but there are places where a robot could do a work where human surgeons might not be available. Now, I'm not saying that it will completely replace human surgeons altogether, but we have seen that as a possibility where in far out reaching places where healthcare is needed, we might not have to fly in a doctor anymore. You might have this done with the help of a machine in a far more effective and a cheaper manner. Since 2020, we've seen a larger use of health monitoring devices. Almost every one of us might have bought a health monitoring device that tells us what our blood SpO2 levels are. We have brands today researching on making t-shirts that could tell a prospective or an aspiring sports player what type of nutritional levels should they have to ensure that they are able to play at the most optimum levels. We have seen how very effective monitoring system could ensure that you're able to keep track of your near and dear ones in case they have a health related emergency as well. We've already seen brands do this right now. Now imagine what this could do over the next 15 or 20 years. Now, how does it impact a lifestyle and thereby a life expectancy altogether? Every time medical sciences has improved, we have seen a significant increase in life expectancies. Now, when a life expectancy is improved, it not only means that we are going to live for longer, it also means that we'll have to think, what do we do during the years that we are alive? Today, we might have to look at jobs where we probably are retiring at the age of 60, when our life expectancies are at about 85. If that further improves, where the life expectancy could go from an 85 to maybe a 95 or 100, you might not want to retire at the age of 60 anymore. You might be fitter for longer. If you live longer, that's what the primary expectation is. So would that change the kind of jobs that you might do? Would that change the kind of competition that individuals have for the same kinds of jobs? And I've heard this all the time. So if I'm not going to retire at 60, if I'm going to work for another 10 or 15 years, that means that there might be certain areas that we would be competing with generations after us. And I do understand that there are certain jobs where youth or a lot of energy does a much better job than people who are experienced. And at the same time, there are certain jobs that experience matters more than youth and energy. If you look at lawyers and doctors, the best lawyer or the best doctor in town usually isn't someone with very few years of experience. These are usually individuals with 20, 25 years of experience. So while certain jobs might change the way they provide opportunities to individuals, we might have to compete for certain types of jobs. But net, a vast amount of improvement in our health sciences would mean that people would live for longer. They would live much more meaningful lives. The types of relationships that they have will change. The kind of products that we make for those individuals will also change. Think about the countries where there is a high percentage of a geriatric population. The kind of products that are made would have to change basis the demography. So today, India is a country which has a high number of people who are considered as youth. Thereby, most of the products that we make are for the youth. But if you move into a society where you would have a higher population of people above the ages of 40, 50, 60 or 70, you would see the type of products also will have to evolve based on the needs of those individuals. Adding more to how technology is impacting health sciences, we've already seen a lot of changes happening in the areas of prosthetics. Because 20 years ago, an amputee without a leg would have to make do with a plastic limb which is only there for aesthetic purposes. For example, the Jaipur foot. Today, we have carbon fiber, 3D printed limbs where I have seen people climb the Mount Everest with artificial limbs. So you've seen the jump from being an aesthetic device to something that is completely functional. And that's today. I'm not even talking about 20 years from now. Moving on, we're also making a lot of progress in the areas of 3D printed organs. Now, how is that going to impact your lifestyle? How is that going to impact your life expectancy? You might not have to wait for an organ donor anymore. You can get a 3D printed organ that is designed for you, customized for you, and you might not be at risk if you're waiting for an organ donor anymore. So that impacts your overall life expectancy in a way as well. Now, I'm not saying that these are things that are widely available, but what I'm trying to say is that these are few of the research areas that already publications have been made. We are looking to perfect these areas as well over time. Now, every time there's a new emergence of a technology, you would notice that it won't be perfect. Think about the first cell phone you bought and think about the cell phones you use today. Look at the usability of those two cell phones. Today, you have a cell phone that can probably replace your computers, your laptops, and most other devices. The first cell phone I had could probably only make phone calls, send texts, and maybe use the most rudimentary form of the internet. Today, I can use almost every single app that I would normally use on my laptop as well. So what I mean to say is that while most of these technologies that you would see in various sectors be in their most rudimentary form, what we're not thinking about is what they can do today. What we are thinking about is what they can do in the future. Unfortunately, when we prepare students for careers, we prepare them for jobs that exist today but may not exist in the future. What we need to do is to prepare them for jobs that may not exist today but will exist later. And how do we do that? We look at little changes that are happening around us. Now, moving on to design, retail, and construction. We've seen how technology has helped us with 3D printing. Now, 3D printing in some form we had talked about in how it is being used in healthcare and prosthetic devices. But let's also talk about how it's going to help us construct buildings. Now, there are universities and schools in Africa, specifically in Malawi, that are built with the help of 3D printers. There are bridges that are built in Scandinavian countries with the help of 3D printing technology. Now, with 3D printing technology, it's not only helped make constructions faster and more efficient, but it's also enabled for more localized manufacturing and localized resources. So for example, the schools that are built in Africa, the clay the raw materials that were used in those schools were all locally sourced. When you look at that, that kind of tells you how you could reduce your carbon footprint by sourcing all your materials locally, by using a construction system that is based on technology, that is based on an artificial intelligence design. And you've seen how all of that makes our jobs a little easier, makes construction of system, and you've seen how that makes construction times much more efficient, much more cheaper, and far more long lasting.